The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Bumblefoot. Bumblefoot.
Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make the louder noise, but women rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
Alright.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Please take your seat above us. There will be entrance. Prepare for takeoff. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and lift off.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and great to have you along for the ride on this Friday, October 6th. Saturday, October 7th, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond. Hope you had a great day and night. We are live right here in the Great White North on top of the mountains of central British Columbia, right here for your listening entertainment 7 days a week. We welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, the High Plains Talk Radio Network. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Like our music? Get your horns up for Mr. Rod Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy and Sons of Apollo. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Hey, if you're on social media, so are we. We're on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States. Tune us in on TuneIn. We're on TalkStream Live, and you can download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, if you want to take part in this show, you got to do me a favor. You got to get into one of the chat rooms. You also have to sign in to either Revolution Radio, Spreaker, the UPRN chat room, or on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or if you're on Twitter, use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I will get to your questions in there as well. Now, if you head to our website for $5 a month, you can become an SOR space traveler, and as of right now, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. Read the encounter online. If you've had an experience you can't explain, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Check out my latest blog, and you can also have some great video viewing from Tim Doyle's UFO Seekers and Leslie Mitchell Clark's Contact TV. Tonight, it's the first Friday of the month, which means we welcome back Mr. R. Keith Andrews and the E.T. Connection. Keith is a lifelong experiencer who's been in contact with E.T.s as recently just as a couple of days ago. And he uses his knowledge and personal experiences to help others who have had contact or abduction experiences as well. Tonight, with Keith, we will get into a variety of topics, as we always do, pertaining to all things extraterrestrial, from the ships they fly to how you can decipher between positive and negative contact. And of course, since this is an interactive show, we'll be taking your questions as they come up as well in the chat rooms and on Twitter. Mr. R. Keith Andrews, back again, my friend. It's been a couple weeks since we got to see you and ride down with you to the Forest Moon Paracon in Washington State. How are you?
Not bad. That was it's great to be back. You know, in all fairness, I sort of missed the show last week when we were down at the Paracon, but talk about a ride. You know.
No, absolutely. And it was long because, you see, I had a straight route to get to Concrete, Washington, from where I am in the middle of nowhere, British Columbia. But I had to detour and then detour again in order to get to Keith, because Keith was riding on down with us. I didn't mind, though. Keith, I could tell you point blank, I'm going to say this publicly, you're a hell of a man. You are a hell of a man, and, you know, when we got home, probably the most impressive thing that I saw was how excited you were and your son was to see that you were at home once again. I mean, that was a nice moment for me to capture, you know, on a personal level, to see what kind of a dad and how interactive you are with your kids. You know, you're a good man, my friend, and thank you so much for allowing me to see a little bit of that.
Well, I do appreciate it, and I really can't say enough about my kids, you know. But I could go on about that and turn that into a show itself, and I don't think that's going to go over all that well, you know. But
you're allowed to brag. You're allowed to brag.
Well, that works out well, because whether I'm allowed to or not, well, it kind of works out that way.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Absolutely. What was your favorite part of the Forest Moon Paracon?
You know, I'm really not entirely certain. I can tell you what my least favorite part was. I think one of the, aside from definitely the issue of meeting you and the rest of the crew, Cooper and Eric Markham, Preacher and, all of them. It was just, my memory is not good where it comes to names. But one thing is for certain, that whole crew down there, even just the other visitors, the other attendees, it was a really good open group.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? The only thing that upset me about that entire weekend, and I hope Cooper is listening while I do this, never mind the fact that he shaved off his beard right after the Paracon. That one hurt. That one stung the soul a little bit. But the most disappointing fact for me that weekend is it just wasn't long enough.
Well, I will absolutely agree with you there. That said, I understand the complications. I mean, in all fairness, we really have to work at making it a little more involved with the people, get the community really strongly behind us. I mean, everybody in the community that I spoke to anyway was very behind it. Even to the point of while we were down at the hub, across the street, there was a ghost jumping between the two windows. In the I forget what the name of the building was, but right across the street from the hub, which is the little bar that we all went to, I was talking to Eric about it. There was a ghost right in the second floor, jumping between the center window and the left hand.
Yes, I saw her.
Yeah. So that was an interesting, shall we say, corroboration of what I'd been told all along.
It's a great little town, isn't it?
It is. It's a real throwback of a town, but in all fairness, it's got its own real definite personality.
Well, I cannot wait to get back next year, and, thank goodness we all got invited back. We didn't burn down the town, and we all had some fun, so it was a great weekend indeed. And Cooper, if you're listening right now, and I see you on Facebook, it wasn't long enough. Our only complaint, it wasn't long enough. So thank you so much for that event, and Keith, thanks for driving on down. It was a lot of fun with you. And it was really cool? I'd never seen this before, but on the way home, we actually saw a triple rainbow.
We did. And those are decidedly rare.
I'd never seen one before. We're coming up in British Columbia, we're coming up between Merritt and Kelowna. And it started raining on the downswing towards Kelowna, where Keith lives. And lo and behold, there's a triple rainbow. Never seen that before in my life. It was kind of cool. The stupid part about it was, I recently was cleaning out my phone to create more room because I got to do another update on it. And I accidentally erased those photos.
Oh, now that's depressing.
Yeah, I'm a little upset about that, but that's okay. That's okay. So, Gail's question here. Why don't you guys just have 2 Paracons a year? Well, next year we're going to probably go back to back. If we're blessed enough to get ours up and running next year, which is the plan, we will be doing them back to back. So that way there is a week-long party, just with passports needed in between. So,
yeah, no doubt.
But
I've just got to arrange the time to pull that one, but if everything goes the way I desire it to, things could be entertaining for me all the way around.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I've got a number of books I'm in the process of actually working with a potential publisher for, and if that can fund things properly, then it gives me a lot more free time to work.
Well, you know what? I look forward to it again next year, my friend. And I hope a lot more Spaced Out Radio listeners show on up to show their support, make a trek down, because if you're going to make a trek down, you're going to have to make a trek up as well. So it is kind of cool.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely is. And the reality is, like, when we were down in Concrete, the people down there were very open to talking about this, about the whole issue around the Paracon, around the the ghosts and the UFOs, the whole 9 yards. Right. I mean, it's a very, most people think of small towns as a little locked in their ways and what have you. Concrete couldn't be further from it. It was definitely one of those trips to remember.
Absolutely. And like I said, the hardest part was it just wasn't long enough. So, Keith, what have you been doing since the Paracon?
Well, aside from trying to I actually took the week off after the Paracon and just hung around with my boys and did some puttering around the house. And amazingly enough, caught up on a little bit of sleep that apparently I required. So I mean, I didn't put my feet up very, very long. And, so all of that was just normal for me. And then, getting back into the UFO side of things, decided 2 days ago to go topside. That kind of threw me for I wasn't planning on that one, especially the length of time I was gone. But boy, it was a mess the following day. If there's one thing about going off planet that you suffer from, and I suffer from it myself, it's potassium crash. And I'll tell you, those create a problem for energy levels. And, for the people that don't know what it is, quite simply put, well, it's a drop in your potassium levels. But if you look into what astronauts go through, they have reported consistently, every time they come back from orbit, a potassium crash. Which basically throws your thinking right out the window. But I have managed to get a number of the craft that I've been witness to. I'm not a shall we say, qualified artist, but I have been putting the ships on paper so that I can start working on getting that side of the writing done as well. And of course, Coop wants the information as well to be able to help with his projects. As far as teaching people, like the same thing you do, Dave, where we're trying to help people, or never mind trying, we are helping people sort of come to grips with what's going on. And there is no question, it seems to be a much bigger, like a much more active round that's going on. I know of a couple of people. I was talking to one just this week who has been taken so frequently in the last week, couple 3 weeks here, that it's starting to seriously disrupt their life. So trying to help them cope with it becomes a challenge for them as well.
Question from Gail: what causes the potassium crash?
Best I can tell you is there seems to be a metabolic modification that happens when you leave orbit. It seems to be directly affected by the by the shift in gravity and your exposure to both the solar winds, but the, shall we say, greatly reduced or greatly increased radiation flow. And no, I'm not worried about getting cancer. Whole different type of radiation. But not being a doctor, I'm really not entirely certain. I just know it happens.
I had a really good UFO experience earlier this week.
You got a ride?
No, I wish. No, damn it. Carl hasn't shown up yet. Don't even get me started on my anger with Carl again. Don't even get me started. No, we were out geocaching earlier this week, and we ended up coming across this geocache that was in this cemetery. So as we're looking for it, the gentleman who takes care of the cemetery, who lives right next door, he's like, "Have you found it yet?" And we're like, "No, we're just getting to it." And it went and introduced ourselves. His name was Bruce, and we were asking him how haunted it is, and it was weird because at first he had stated, "Yeah, this place is really haunted. Lots of weird stuff happening here." And then, within a few minutes, he kind of clammed up a little bit, because I asked him, I saw a telescope on his porch, and I said, so you see anything up in this odd anomalies up in the sky? He's like, no, just the odd shooting star. I said, no UFOs? He goes, no. Not a one. I'm like, are you sure? I was kind of egging him on, and he's like, nope, nothing. Okay, so I figured that's kind of the key on where to push it from there. I pushed it probably a tad too far. So a few minutes later, which is rare up here, we get a contrail going, or more so a chemtrail, heading south. And then there is one coming north to create the big X in the sky. And as the one coming north passes through the X to continue on, right underneath that, Mrs. Spaced Out Radio, myself, see this shiny orb ripping right underneath where those chemtrails were. I have so rarely seen a daytime UFO. Out of all the experiences I've had, that's maybe the second or the third that it had happened. But it was going so fast, and I tried to grab photographs of it on my iPhone, but unfortunately, I just could not get them. It was like they weren't even there. I was aiming my camera right in that area where it was as it was flying. It was either too small to pick up, or it just disappeared, even though we could still see it with our eyes. So it was very intriguing indeed, because there wasn't a cloud in the sky. We could see the airliners because they were the ones creating the chemtrails, and then this little guy just went ripping right through. It was the neatest experience.
Oh yeah, they and the maneuverability of them. If you ever watch them pull a 90, it's just incredible the speed they do it.
See, that's something I haven't seen yet. Out of all the UFOs I've seen, I've never seen them do that 90-degree bank.
Well, trust me, it doesn't work out much as a bank. It's kind of like saying that a square has a bank around the corner. You know.
Mm-hmm. No, I get that, and I can appreciate that. It was just weird, that's all, because, like I said, most of my experiences always seem to happen in daytime, never, or at nighttime, never in daytime.
Well, I'm pretty certain that is designed on their part, because you get less flack, if you will. Like, they get less flack, or people get less concerned if they can question what they're looking at. When you're seeing a daytime like you did, well, let's face it, it wasn't a plane, it was an orb. There is no real way anybody can convince you of anything else.
Well, there was no sound. That was the funny part. The airliners were far enough away where we had already lost their sound. And when this guy came ripping through, there was no sound at all. That's usually my first indication that it is something a little bit off.
Yeah, absolutely. Gee, now there's a neat little question in Spreaker here by BTO. So, who does RKA connect with within this universe? Do we have enough time for that?
You run through it. That's the question. You know how this works.
Well, let's see. We've got, obviously, I end up dealing with humans. I've got Thrasazians, the Teklek, the Chitawati, the Quaddle, the Greys, of course, the Pleiadians, the Nordics. End up dealing with a number of the different elementals, as well as the octopods and the amoebics. I've dealt with the ascetics, but I'll tell you, they're a grumpy batch. I have dealt with both the vegans, the mantis, and the ant folk, as well as the laborians, the lichen, the Martokians, Venusians. Just trying to think of. I'm just running through. Of course, I've dealt with Radio Command. I've dealt obviously to me with the consortium. I have dealt with the fairy folk as well as the sea fairies and the merfolk. Now, in all fairness, those people are not off-worlders. They were born here. Well, mind you, so was the Chitwari. I've also dealt with what you would call what many people would call the mythological dwarves, as well as the fairies, as in the tiny little people, little wings, that sort of thing. Many people call them pixies. And then, of course, we've also got Mobians that I deal with. Mobians are actually, well, quite literally, they are humans. They just left the planet a long time before this go-around of civilization. So, the nice little part about it is that, another one of and these are one of the more grumpy races, in my opinion, but you just have to know how to deal with them, is the Tormenon. All of these races they do, for the most part, at least tolerate each other, but for the most part, because of the consortium, they actually work together. Because that's what the consortium is for, is to keep everything balanced. No. John Teeter is asking, and this is another group I work with, is John Teeter in Spreaker is asking if the Lemurians are of Lyran descent, and the answer is definitively not. They are not related in any functional fashion. But, and of course, he brings up another race that I also deal with, which is the Lyrans. Right. we can carry on, but the list is, to say the least, a little on the extensive side, and I don't deal with all of them. There are some races I haven't directly dealt with, although I've seen them floating around and, or wandering through the crowds, and just haven't dealt with them. So I don't have a lot to work with as far as that goes at this point.
Right.
I'm suspecting that'll get stronger as we go.
Let's get to Teresa's question here. She is asking, are orbs gathering samples from chemtrails, or is it some kind of resource for orbs or craft or off-worlders?
Well, oddly enough, we can actually say yes. They are gathering samples of them, but part of that is because they're also setting up, by getting the samples, they are able to set up a counteragent to balance out what mankind is ill-advisedly doing. But other than that, because of what the chemtrails are, some of the orbs, depending on which race we're talking about or which set we're talking about, do use the chemical as a fuel source, as an added fuel source, if you will. It's not the only one they've got. So, of course, the concern that many people have that all of this chemical that is being put out through the chemtrails is being dumped all the way to the planet, it doesn't all get there. There is concerted effort on the part of the off-worlders to ensure that mankind's, shall we say, ill-advised exuberance to modify the planet is being contained, at least to a degree. But they certainly are using it to, oddly enough, also track what humans are up to.
Couple questions. Go ahead. Sorry, Keith.
Fire away.
I was going to get to BTO's first question of two. He is asking, do you consider these ETs aspects of ourselves that need to be reintegrated?
Well, that's kind of a yes, but understand something very, very important. When I talk about them being aspects of ourselves, we have to go back to the issue of the soul. Okay, now, when a soul breaks itself apart to experience the physical world, because there is so much energy, this is why the soul splits itself into multiple parts. and where the concept of the soulmate comes from. The ETs running around, there is no doubt that somewhere on this planet or somewhere else that they have a counterpart to their own soul. So when both the ET and wherever their other counterpart is pass away, they are able, if they found each other, to reintegrate, to merge and become a higher entity. But the concept that many people have said, that I've heard from many people, that they are simply a part of mankind's consciousness making itself known, that part is overstated.
How come?
Well, because they're not a physical extension from mankind's understanding, but they are another part of you, of the soul, that does in time get reintegrated into a higher self. But we can't say that the ET gets reintegrated into the human, because both the human and the off-worlder get reintegrated into something higher. Okay, into a more advanced race. Or shall we say more complete, not really more advanced.
That would make sense. Let's get to BTO's next question. Are the Zetans then related to the Lemurians?
Only in as much, like, they are not descendants. Neither one is a descendant of the other. Okay, the Lemurians, in all fairness, are actually human. Only they're human from many centuries back. They were the one race, and they did have interstellar travel. They were the one race, the one run that mankind has made on this planet, where mankind actually got off the planet successfully. But the race of Lemurians, which, like I said, are human, that civilization got wiped out in a heartbeat by literally a curious thought. Okay, this is why there was no record of their passing, if you will, to speak of. Because they did everything by physical manifestation. Mm-hmm. So when the race died, there was nothing left to record. Mm-hmm. But it literally died because of a curiosity issue. It wasn't war. It wasn't some sort of disease that wiped them out. Okay, it was literally, the whole bunch of us quite literally just shut our hearts off because somebody said, well, what would happen if we all did that at the same time? We'd never tried it before. It was a bad idea.
I see. Okay. Let's get to another question here. This from the SOR Space Travelers Club. Kelly is asking, do you have any insight or inside knowledge in regards to implants and what they're for in regards to location on one's body? I have one in my left ear, one located next to my Achilles tendon, and one in my sinus cavity, right side of my nose. Are they mainly tracking devices?
For the most part, yes. It's sort of a redundancy thing. The idea being, if one is spotted or gets damaged, then they still have a couple of others available. Plus, of course, depending on where they're being located, they also are designed specifically to pick up specific signals. For instance, when you're looking at the one in the ear, it's literally going after the auditory impact and the cognitive resonance in there, tied also into the optic side because of the way they do it. The one in the nasal cavity does exactly the same thing, while the one in the Achilles heel is designed more to check on nerve relays. Okay, but they are strictly, from a KS standpoint of information gathering, they are not set up for any form of broadcast. Okay, well, I shouldn't say not for any form, but they're not a control mechanism to get people to do stupid things.
Are we able to know on our own whether or not they are active?
Well, technically the answer is yes. Most people are not sensitive enough to the electromagnetic field that it generates. And in all fairness, most of the technology that mankind has access to isn't sensitive enough to really tell. But the answer is, yeah, everybody is capable of it. Just very few people do.
All right, let's get to Gail's question here. She is asking, Keith, have you ever had any encounters that have really made you feel fear, for your life?
Oh, yeah. Hence why I suffer from PTSD. The ant folk, quite frankly, created a massive problem for me. And they were directly responsible for a lot of the complications I had when I was a kid. And, it's every time they take me, it's been getting a little better, but it's not a fun thing. This is a group that is literally looking for human weakness or for Terran weakness. And it was at their hands that I had my right elbow shattered for no other reason than to find out how far it would bend. Like these guys are not what you would consider, if you're ever taken by the ant folk, they are not the people that are going to make your life a little bit more comfortable or a little bit more copable. Right? At least with the Greys, when they take you, they do their best to keep things calm. These guys, frankly, don't care. The Vegans run into a problem. They don't understand pain and therefore have a problem compensating for it because they don't have a pain center. But the ants know exactly what they're doing. So...
Sounds like fun.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you what, you have that kind of fun, okay?
No. I have my own issues with Carl. Standing me up all the time. I don't need to worry about anything else but Carl right now. That's what it comes down to. The questions are coming fast and furious here from people. Let's get to Susan. Susan, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. Keith, I have heard you refer to the neutral net. Is it related to chi?
Okay. The answer would be yes. The neural net literally links all, simply put, existence together. The study of chi does a reasonable job, the practice of chi, I should say, does a reasonable job of tapping into it and getting that sense of continuity, that sense of peace that you're able to get through the connectivity of the neural net. It's one of the more effective methods of meditation and of focus that I've actually heard anything about, because it does actually focus on what it's supposed to. It's not just using it as trying to use it as a weapon.
Second part to Susan's question, do the off-worlders interact with it?
Oh, absolutely. Depending on the off-worlder, okay, the fairy folk use it all the time. Mankind, on the whole, does not believe in true magic. Okay, true magic being the ability to manipulate energy and make things happen. The fairy folk do. Okay, many of the off-worlders don't tend to use it in the same way that they could, and this is why I mentioned the issue that much as they've got better toys, they aren't necessarily more advanced. Now, the Pleiadians do use what would amount to chi to help heal people. Okay, to quite literally sort it out. Okay, but
and how do they do that?
Well, by focusing their mental thought process, they can modify the energy in another living entity, and accelerate the healing rate, which is one of the purposes of chi. That's how ultimately that's what it works with, because it helps you see, like the Watchers are a real good example of people using chi for its ultimate purpose of keeping track of everything. That becomes the nice little part, of that worked out, because the various different races, depending on what you call it, anytime somebody is using a non-physical method of communication or modality, they are tapping into the neural net, or they're using a form of chi, if you will. Okay, it's just many times called by a different name.
All right.
I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. Let's move on to John's question. Actually, first, I apologize. Let's get to Canadian Joe's question at #SpacedOutRadio. Keith, with all the information and all the experiences you have had in your entire life, do you have any photos of any of these alien species?
No. How was that for subtle? The biggest issue is, number one, it's not like I take cameras with me. Number two, technology confuses me more often than not. The fact I'm on the computer and it's actually running is kind of a bonus. But, much like even when I was down at the Paracon, everybody's taking pictures. It never dawned on me to take a bunch. So even on that, which most people would think, oh, you went on a trip, you should take pictures, it's just not one of the things I actually think about. And of course, quite frankly, when I was a kid, being abducted was not one of those things that was a highlight of a holiday. Of course, the other issue, especially in today's world, is even with the photos, and I see so many people go through this, you put a photo up and everybody goes, oh, that's a faked photo. You went through that yourself. Just a little while ago, as I recall, Dave. And, so do I take photos? No. Mind you, in all fairness, I don't ask most of their names either. It would probably be advisable on occasion, but I just don't think that way at all. I trust that makes sense.
Yes. On a side note, I'm efforting right now to see if I can convince Mrs. Spaced Out Radio to make a Tim Hortons run. I may have to
Priorities first, right?
I may have to beg. But I'm craving an ice cap. Not going to lie. Craving an ice cap. Right about now. Anyhow, let us move on, because my cravings really mean nothing to the programming of this show. John's question is, are these same ant folk in the Hopi legends that you talk about? They sure don't sound like them.
In all fairness, I don't know much about the Hopi legends, but I can tell you this. There are more than one race of ants. And presumably this means that the Hopi ants are ones that are of a beneficial nature. Amicable people. These guys are most decidedly not the ones I was referring to. The ones I'm referring to, quite frankly, are they have the capacity to, well, simply put, spit web. They cocoon people in banks while they're working on them. This is sorry about that. Nothing like hitting a nerve. Presumably the ones in the Hopi are of a, shall we say, beneficial guidance.
You okay?
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm not giving you mouth-to-mouth, man.
That's good,
I'm
because then you're not going to end up in the hospital. I mean, don't take that the wrong way.
No,
just certain memories are not what I call enjoyable.
Right. Let's get to Char's question. It's a comment and a question. She says, I have caught them, being the extraterrestrials, on camera several times, but later it is blackened, or they delete the photos, or they're blurry. Have you ever heard of that happening, Keith?
Absolutely. Sometimes it's an issue of their biomagnetic field is such that the camera won't pick it up properly, hence you get the blurry. Sometimes it's because of a magnetic pulse or a photonic pulse that they use. It just fries that particular frame, and yes, they can do it with that much accuracy. And other times they just, once in a while it is just simply the picture doesn't turn out. Technology does fail on occasion. But yeah, I have heard of all of that happening, and more often than not, it's because they don't want, they really don't desire that much open publicity at this point. Mankind is edgy enough. Although, in all fairness, they seem to be getting a little better at it.
We also have the same issue with Sasquatch when it comes to cameras.
Absolutely.
So what causes that?
Well, in the case of Sasquatch, it's quite literally their ability to modify what you're looking at. It's not and you and I run into a bit of a cross current on this one, but it's not a question of technology in their case. It is literally their ability to modify their vibratory rate to make it almost impossible to get a photo of them. Okay, and their ability to maneuver through because of their ability to camouflage, it is, to say the least, difficult to get pictures.
Is it camouflage, or is it their ability to cloak themselves?
Well, this is what I was referring to about their modified vibratory rate. If you watch a rattlesnake, if you watch the tail on a rattlesnake, that is, it almost vanishes because of the speed. Okay, well, they have the ability to, if you will, basically control their vibratory rate enough to vanish into the woodwork, so you just can't see them. But we're not talking about it's basically a different form of the same camouflage technique that the chameleons use. Where they just blend into the surroundings, and of course, because of their coloring and the type of terrain they live in, if they go dead still, many times you'll look right at one and not know you're looking at them. Because they blend in that well. But the same can be said for many different animals. They just happen to have a cognizant side to them.
All right, let's move on to the next question here, and I just got to scroll down to get it because this speaker thing just jumps on me sometimes.
Well, that's because of the speed it moves.
I know. I know. Daryl was saying about... Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
Daryl was asking, in regards when you said spider-like threads, what is that like? Is that literal?
Yes, it is literal. It is a webbing much like heavy spider web. And rest assured, it sounds and feels identical to it. It's just one of those things that you really don't want to experience. They show you, if you take a look at it, the best way I can explain it is in Hollywood they use cheesecloth. That when people are trying to break out, they tear through it. Same kind of feel, same kind of strength. Okay, it's just got a very different side effect to it.
All right.
But yeah, it's very much the web.
We got about 6 minutes left before we got to go to our first break of the night. BTO is asking, Keith, have you ever met the true universal creator, and has he gone beyond this universe?
Well, the answer would be, and you're going to love this one, yes and yes. I did so decades ago now. To me, it was kind of a comical interaction because when I found him, and I'll use the term him for the simple fact that saying him, her, it, and everything in between every time I go to mention it is going to be a pain in the neck. So we'll just settle for him. Okay. But when I first showed up, when I first got there, the area I was in, it was kind of along the lines of a beach and water and what have you, but it was, I'm going to use the term gold, but it's the wrong word. It's just I do not have a spoken word that will explain what it was. But when I got there, his first comment to me, he didn't even turn around when I first got there. He was sitting on what amounted to a stone by the water, and I can still remember the waves rippling up on the beach. And he says, "You don't belong here yet." I said, "Well, the door was open." And he goes, "No, it was not." I said, "Yeah, the door was open, but you don't belong here yet." I said, "Well, the door was open." And this went back and forth for the longest time. And he finally goes, "Well, you opened the door." I said, "Well, of course I opened the door, but it was open when I came through it." And he looked at me and that's when he turned around. And he looked at me and he says, "You can't be here yet. You have a job to do." Right? And I looked at him and I just told him, I says, "Well, apparently I can be here. And I'm not impressed with the situation down there, so no." We got into a little bit of I don't want to call it an argument, but it was certainly a little lopsided, and ultimately I ended up back here. But this is that was when my whole outlook on what I was told God was, and because I grew up in the church and I was always told you have to fear God. You don't have to fear God. There is no point in fearing him. First of all, he doesn't want to be feared. Second of all, in simplest terms, if he was really interested in wiping people out, they'd be dead. But I found him to be very congenial, right? A little confused that I was there before I was supposed to be, apparently. So my guess is, quite frankly, that God doesn't actually plan everything out right down to the T. He just kind of points it in the right direction, right? Gives people options. As far as has he gone beyond this universe, the answer is yes, because quite frankly, this wasn't the first Big Bang. This so-called Big Bang that created this universe is not the first one that has happened. And simply put, God has been around a lot longer than that. And before anybody comes up with that question, well, what was before God? Well, you got to go back a long way. But he's not the top of the totem pole, which I know is going to upset people that look at it and go, well, no, God is the top. And by human standards, he may as well be. But do I still talk to him on a regular basis? The answer is yes. Quite frankly, once you know where the door is to go and talk to him, it becomes relatively easy. It's not that you're not allowed to go, but very few people have ever figured out how.
How?
Well,
I'll ask the question. How?
Well, first rule of thumb, you got to figure out where the door is, or more to the point, where it. I'm looking for the right word because it's there and not there at the same time. Once you figure that out, you have to be able to modify things. So you've got to be able to modify your own existence to get through the door. And, on a spiritual level, it's actually quite simple to do. Actually, I should put that this way. I found it easy, but apparently it's not, because very few people actually do it.
We got about 90 seconds here before we got to go to break. BTO's follow-up question to you is, have you gone beyond this universe as your own universal creator as an individual?
Yes. I actually went back. Well, in all fairness, my first past life was 3 big bands ago. But I have traveled to the other side of a black hole this lifetime. That's how I figured out what the ebb and flow of the universal tide actually looks like, was by going there and taking a look. Which is a rush and a half. There is very little that cannot be done. The problem is proving it. And I'll put it this way just before we go on break, but lack of proof does not prove it doesn't exist. That's the biggest challenge people need to get through.
I think we can go back to old Dave's speech at the Forest Moon Paracon about that one.
Yeah, no doubt.
Absolutely. Keith, I'm going to get you to hold on here. We're, we are going to step out for our first break of the night. Our Keith Andrews is with us. The ET Connection happens the first Friday of every month with Keith as our guest, answering your questions. Do me a favor. Make sure that you put all your questions in capital letters. That way I don't miss any, because I know they're coming from the chat rooms, from Twitter. Haven't got any on text yet. I'm sure that'll change. It usually does. You are listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us on this Friday night, early Saturday morning. If your weekend is kicked off, hope you're having a good one. We will be back with more SOR right after this.
365 days a year, we're in the field, investigating UFO sightings, talking to alien abductees, and visiting secret military locations like Area 51. We're UFO Seekers, official partner of Spaced Out Radio. Follow our daily search for the truth at ufoseekers.com or like us on social media. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Want to learn more about aliens, cover-ups, conspiracies, cryptids, and the paranormal? All you have to do is tune in S4 as we take over the Spaced Out Radio night, starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, each and every Saturday night, right after Spaced Out Saturdays. Hi there, this is Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. Join me, Corey Ruiz, and friends as we discuss the hot topics of the night. It's fun, entertaining, and as dark as the night. Find us at spacedoutradio.com.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
Want a place to share your experiences without feeling judged? We have the place for you. If you've experienced sightings or contact with ETs, ghosts, cryptids, or UFOs, and you'd like someone to confidentially look into the matter, just fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our goal is to help you get the answers you need to the experiences you've had with our professional team of researchers. Your information stays 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines report. Fill out your experience today only at spacedoutradio.com.
Psychic Sundays, spiritual communication, ET contact, Sasquatch in your backyard. We will have it all on Cosmic Passport with me, Elizabeth Anglin. Each Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, at spacedoutradio.com, I will take you on a journey of enlightenment. The goal is learning from the soul on out. We'd love it if you joined our experience. Cosmic Passport, heard Sundays at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night, it's Dave Cruz in the SOR headquarters cabin, as he will bring in Spaced Out Saturdays, and on Sunday, it's Elizabeth Anglin with Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Sundays. It's going to be absolutely great. Hope you tune in. Both shows get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Quinquagesima. Quinquagesima is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night, right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Use the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. If you want to connect live with me during the show, give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join us on our Facebook chat live during the show, the SOR Space Travelers group. Sign into that one. We are also on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn, download this show and others on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. Rock out to some Bumblefoot. You can also shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, watch UFO Seekers and Contact TV videos, and read up on the encounter online, and so much more. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. It's the first Friday of the month, which means our Keith Andrews is back with the ET Connection as Keith goes over all your questions regarding extraterrestrial contact and UFOs. Keith, welcome back.
Well, thank you very much for having me there, Dave, and welcome back to all the listeners that are still with us and the newcomers that jumped in while we were missing or while we were on break.
I'm pretty excited here, buddy. I'm pretty excited. During the break, I was able to convince Mrs. SOR to run to Tim Hortons for me.
You should have suggested she drive.
Well, yes. Yes, I should have. Yes, I should have. Getting a ham and cheese sandwich. Getting a honey glazed donut and an ice cap. I'm going for it tonight, man. The way I've been hauling wood and the amount of firewood I chopped up for her this year, I deserve it. I deserve to end a week's full of shows with an ice cap, a ham and Swiss sandwich, and a honey glazed donut. Hi, Bob.
Well,
good to see you show up in the SOR Space Travelers group. Go ahead, Keith.
Aside from your choice in the ice cap, I can settle for the coffee, but the rest of it was a good idea.
Yeah. Old Davy needs a sandwich. I'm not going to lie. Old Davy needs a sandwich. That's just the way it is. There's a Canadian contingent right now who's listening in. They're all frothing at the mouth right now. The Americans are like, what the hell is he talking about? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but any of them that have made it across the border, have undoubtedly run into a Tim's.
All right. Let's get to our questions as we open up the forum to our audience tonight to ask their questions, everything extraterrestrial. We do have some topics we will get to, but hey, if the audience wants their questions answered, we're going to do that. That's what we do on this show with Keith. We do it a little bit differently than we normally do for other SOR episodes. Make sure your questions are typed in capital letters, please. Christoph has a question. The door you mentioned opening, is that a metaphysical location?
In all fairness, it's sort of halfway between physical and metaphysical. You literally have to be able to link both. You've got to be able to find a balance point between the two worlds, because it's literally at the halfway point. Okay, which makes it entertaining to try and get through. But it's, I'm trying to think of the easiest way to put it. If you're not balanced properly, you're going to have problems. And I think one of the biggest reasons that I was able to get through it, and it's just a suspicion on my part, most people with the astral travel take a silver cord with them. In my case, and that connects the silver cord to the physical body. In my case, because of the way the thing started out for me, I don't have one. And it may be that lack of the umbilical cord that enabled me to get through the door as quick as I did. But again, this is suspicion on my part. I don't have any way of, shall we say, corroborating it one way or the other.
All right.
I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. Let's get to another question from BTO, who is asking, who do you truly connect with, galactically and universally, Keith?
Well, I'm going to plead ignorance on this one. I'm not entirely certain I understand the question.
Who do you...
And yes, I realize that sounds... it sounds like a normal question, but...
Who are you familiar in your connections with? Who comes to you the most?
Oh, Lord, I gave up trying to count that one. That's kind of like asking who it is at Tim Hortons that I run into, or who it is I run into at the mall the most. Because it's, yes, I run into the members of the council quite frequently. The best way I suspect I can put it is I've got 7 friends I run with, some of which are off-worlders, some of which are ancient race, and a few of which are ghosts. But if we talk about Cyric, he's a vegan. Okay, Kulak is a Srazazian. Tasha happens to be a good friend of mine, but she's a full fairy. She's a full fairy. Well, quite frankly, an elf. Fenyon is a ghost. He was a friend of mine centuries back, in all fairness. We ran together during the bubonic plague. Made a lot of money that year. It wasn't 1 year, but you get the idea. So, but where it comes to overall, it really depends at this point on where I'm called to. Because it's not one specific individual that I really, if you will, make a definitive point of, aside from, like I said, the few friends that I've got. I think that's what you're asking.
Are your kids connected as well?
Oh, yeah. One of them argues the point. The other one is just learning how to work with it. But both of them are electrokinetics.
Is that difficult for you, seeing that it's been passed down?
No. To me, it's just the way it is. I mean, it's... No, like, as I've mentioned before, my youngest son has CP. Right? Mild case of cerebral palsy. And it's, to me, that's just the way it is. It doesn't make it more difficult. It doesn't make it easier. It's just different. It does present challenges that aren't normal. Like, for instance, nobody can afford to get really agitated because it screws up the electronics in our house. But it's really not something that makes things complicated. You just have to, be aware. I mean, it's kind of along the same lines that my kids have had to adjust to the fact that my heart stops. They just got used to it, and it's just the way it is. Whether or not it concerns them or not, well, I know the elder one hides it well if it concerns him. He just looks at me and goes, well, you're not dying, I'm going out. But it becomes that routine.
All right, while we're waiting for more questions from our audience, one of the questions that I wanted to talk to you about, and it came up during Elizabeth and Eric's ride home as well, is back to UFOs for a few moments. A lot of times we see strange things in the sky, strange clouds that just seem to be out of place, maybe a gray or a dark cloud when it's 30 degrees and there's no other clouds in the sky except this one that seems to be moving awkwardly fast across the horizon. We also always hear about cloaking of UFOs. That's why we don't see them much. They don't want maybe the military to be tipped off to their signal or something. I don't really know. I'm just paraphrasing here because I've heard that before. How much cloaking actually goes on?
Well, the easiest one, like there isn't as much true cloaking as you might think, but cloud cover is quite often used, and it's done by ionizing the hull, and thereby creating the, as you put it, the oddly moving cloud. You know, you're looking at a bank of clouds, and there's one little runaway that you're looking at it going, well, if it's moving that fast, why aren't the rest of the clouds moving with it? Well, it's because it's under its own power, and they're not. You know. But that's one of the best pictures that I've seen done on film was actually in, I think, Independence Day. It might have actually, I'm a little fuzzy on the memory. It may have happened in Close Encounters of the Third Kind as well, when the ship comes out of the cloud bank. Right. That's the ionization factor that they did a phenomenal job in recreating in that movie. You know, but that's, you know, that is one of the other issue around cloaking. Oddly enough, mankind has the ability to do it as well, but they do have a way of actually showing what's behind the ship in front of them. And literally it's a case of working with different imagery. In Japan, they actually, on the back of semis, because of the size of the roads there, on the back of the semi, they actually have a screen on the back door that shows you what's in front of the semi, so you know when it's safe to pull out and pass. It's the same idea. It makes now in their case, they don't put it across the whole back of the vehicle. It's basically a movie screen. But if you take that picture to its ultimate level, you can do the exact same thing with a full-size starship, and you'd never see it unless you spot the variation on the fringe. Okay. So does cloaking happen? The answer is yes, and one of the primary reasons for it is, well, it is the military. They keep shooting at them. You know, and the off-worlders are doing their best not to create a major disruption. So, you know, trying to keep it to a low key is an idea. If they really wanted to make a mess of things, or they really wanted to take over, they wouldn't be sneaking around in the shadows. They'd come out in full public and cause abject panic.
So the ships that are being cloaked, is it every species that's cloaking, or is it maybe the more negative species? How does that work?
Actually, it has to do with the technology side of it. You know, whether they're negative or positive, it really boils down to if they've got the capacity, they tend to use it. There are some ships that don't bother, right? Like, for instance, Swazians don't bother cloaking, but because of the way their ship is made, and the Pleiadians have the same issue on this one, because of the way their ship is made, it tends to reflect. So unless there's something right there to offset the reflection, you're going to see them. They don't bother. And the difference between the two ships, they're both silver colored cigar shape. Swazian ships have the window banks, Pleiadian ships don't. Okay, that's fundamentally the only difference, you know, from an outside appearance. But most of the ships do have, you call it cloaking, it really isn't. But from human standpoints, it does function that way.
We see a lot of people seeing some different things in the sky, from little orbs like I saw the other day, to black triangles, to cigar-shaped shifts, or cigar-shaped ships. There we go.
Say that 3 times.
Yeah, fast. No, we're going to just end that one right there. Let me ask you this. How do we know which ships are flown by whom? Because, let's face it, it's known, very well known, that the U.S. military and the Black Ops is dabbling in black triangles. So it's hard to say what is there. There's also the boomerang or arrowhead-looking ships out there that people have seen.
Yeah.
What are we dealing with? Can we put a ship shape to a species yet? Are we that advanced?
Well, I don't know if you want to call it advanced, but can we to some of them? The answer is yes. Okay. Now, the problem with the black triangles is more often than not, the black triangles are consortium ships. They're right from the, if you will, head office itself. They're the ones that when they pick people up, people have reportedly stated seeing multiple different races on the ship they were taken on. Okay, so those are consortium. Now I caught a picture. Somebody sent me a picture the other day of a phenomenal ship that has a whole lot of outcroppings, and it's not a sleek machine by any stretch. Right, it's got all kinds of protrusions from it. That also belongs to the consortium, but that's their science vessels. Okay, their science vessel, and the one is a science vessel and living quarter. The other one that is similar, but the whole front end is, if you will, rounded. That's a battleship, and that front indent is quite frankly, it's a weapon. Now the standard, what people have seen, what they depict on most movies, that standard saucer shape, that belongs to the Greys. Now, humans have rebuilt or built their own version of it with some success. So, of course, again, we run into the problem of, well, how can you be certain who's on board? Well, unfortunately, the only way you can really do that is get on board. Not necessarily your brightest move, depending on who it is. Because if it's the humans that you get on board, they have a tendency of being really, really aggressive. The off-worlders tend to be a whole lot nicer about it. Okay. Let me just so that I'm actually in the process. I was talking to you about this earlier, Dave, about starting to sketch them, and I'm no artist to speak of. Technically, I'm an artist in as much as I draw. Okay, but if you can stick man, you're an artist.
I can barely draw a stick figure, man. I am that bad. I don't even try anymore.
You should try having one that falls down the stairs and lands in the carburetor. That's where I started.
No. Sounds too difficult. Sounds way too difficult.
But, no, there's a few other ships. Now, there's a couple of them still trying to piece together who they belong to. Because normally when I go, it's a pretty normal issue. They pick me up, and it's usually the consortium I end up dealing with. Makes it quite convenient from my end. Many people have seen ships, but they won't see the actual ship. They'll see it above the clouds. Like they see it through the cloud, where it's got all kinds of color lights coming off it in a cyclic pattern, but multicolors. Multiple different lights. Almost looks like a light show. And what you usually find is other colored lights above it that are not following the same pattern. Those ships, there's no question at all, they belong to the ants. And that is a group you don't want picking you up. Those people I do not have a whole lot of, shall we say, nice things to say about. But seeing the actual ship, they don't tend to come down. Okay, now you've seen, I don't know if anyone in particular has seen it, but there's a ship that comes down, and I'll use the term ship. It'll be smaller, has a red, yellow, and bluish green light that travel around, that kind of vacillate back and forth, almost rotate. Like it's a 3-light pattern. Those are great probes. Okay, and more often than not, they come into the picture right before or just a little while before an actual abduction takes place. There are a number of other ones that are out there, but those are the more common ones that people see. Okay, and of course, the orbs, there's 3 different types of orbs I've seen, but the orb ships are, quite frankly, run by little people. And I do mean, when you're looking at a ship that's only, a foot in diameter, the people in them are small. But those are one-man runners, and they are not used for abduction of any form. But those are some of your major ships.
I know Corey. You met Corey because she traveled down with us to the Forest Moon Paracon. And she forgot to ask you, so I'm going to ask you this. I don't know if she's in the chat room just yet or not. Maybe not. I know she was working late tonight. But she was wondering about the... she was traveling home on the highway one day, and she works in the nurses as a care aide for a seniors facility, and she was driving some seniors back to the facility, and they were buzzed within 100 feet, she says, maybe even a little bit higher, by a craft that she has no explanation for. She said it looked like an airliner. It had the front shape of an airliner, but literally had absolutely no wings and no big tail on it. She had never seen anything like this before, and that ship has been seen by one other person in our community that we know of.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but basically it looks almost like the cigar ships, but with a sloped front end.
Yeah, it would look like the front end of a 737.
Right. Okay, I just want to make sure I was getting the image right in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And in all fairness, I would suspect, now I'm not 100% certain, but I'm going to have to take a look into that and go and find out. But that configuration, in all likelihood, is probably Strazazian, but it may have been Tormenon. The one question that I would ask is what kind of feel she had off it. As in, did she feel like she was in danger, or just it was odd?
No, it was odd because, other of these elderly people whom she was caring for saw it as well.
Right.
And it was odd for her because they were like, what is that? What is that? Like, she didn't feel scared or anything along those lines. It was just very strange to her because it looked like she said, a jumbo jet without wings. And it was very, very close.
Yeah, and at first instinct, I would be inclined to say, because it was just something that felt curious, it's very likely that it is probably Strazazian. The other people that may have had it, because they've got ships that are similar to it, but they usually have ones with small wings, are Radio Command, which is basically it's a research offshoot for the consortium, and they literally just simply scan the area. They're not involved in abductions.
Right. It was just very weird for her.
No doubt.
Let's get to some questions here from our audience. Eric is asking, what reptilian species would not be welcome at Mount Shasta?
Well, simply put, none. That being said, there are specific individuals that would not be welcome. For instance, the Teklik are welcome if they behave themselves. Same as the Tormenon. Mount Shasta does not stop the different races from coming, but they certainly regulate the behavior. There are some races that are more demanding, but if you go to Hollywood, there are some actors that are kind of a pain in the neck. They don't ban them, but they do rein them in. That's the nice thing about Mount Shasta is I don't know of any race that has been told you cannot come.
Right.
Although we can safely say that when the mechanoids, there's one group of mechanoids will not be welcome at Shasta, but on the other hand, they won't be welcome anywhere else either.
Corey is saying, getting back to Corey's comments, because she is in the chat room. Thanks for letting me know, Corey, so I screwed up the story. She's like, I just got in the door. No, it takes some time to log on, my dear. Takes time. Anyhow, she said that it felt like it was waiting for them to see it.
That would be Strazazium. They happen to be allies, which means we don't have to fear them. Although most people, if they see them, will because of their sheer size.
Right. And the plane looked like a jumbo jet without a tail on it.
Yeah, that would make sense. Tails are... Humans seem to think they work really well for aerodynamics, which is true, they do, but they are useless where it comes to biomagnetics.
Right. I'm useless.
The sleeker a machine, the easier it is to maneuver.
Sure. All right, let's move on. Teresa is asking, are ships for traveling or living? And what is a pod?
Okay, well, depending on the ship, but they're for both. Okay, the smaller ships are clearly, from my standpoint, the smaller ships are for scouting, for, abduction runs, specimen collection, that sort of thing. The larger ships, the motherships, are your generation ships. They're the residentials. Okay. And pods are, well, the easiest way to put it is a single man. They're either single man or, and I'll use the term man a little loosely, single occupant, usually sometimes double occupant, or many times a pod may well simply be a drone, a probe. But it depends on which race as to what the individual side of it is going to look like. Quite often they have a tendency of, similar configurations, within a given race. Much like humans have similar configurations in all of their vehicles.
Can one race fly another race's ship?
That depends on the race. For instance, Strazazians can fly many of the human type ships if they are trained, but most of the humanoids do not have their material isn't dense enough for Strazazians to use. Same as humans can't fly a Strazazian ship unless it is outfitted with a human interface, because of the strength that you have to push buttons. Now, if you take Martokians and humans and Greys and Venusians, all of them can fly each other's ship if they're taught how. Octopods, you're not going to fly one of their ships unless you are one, because frankly, you don't have enough hands. You're going to have the same problem with many of the insectoids. Anything that's got 4 arms, if you've got 4 arms, you can be taught how to use it. The amoebics, other than the amoebics, there's not a soul that can run a ship. Well, that's not entirely correct. my apologies. There's one race that can, but there's two. The amoebic ship, by actual physical interface, can only be done by the amoebics, because frankly they crawl inside the ship to create the connections. However, mechanoids can use them because they interface directly with the machine, and again utilize their own body to, if you will, make the connection. And any of the very adept what would be called psionics, like the Pleiadians, could run an amoebic ship, because using physical interface, using telekinetic interface, they could get it to work. But that does take a lot more concentration than you might think. So it really depends on the physical configuration of the individual.
All right, let's get to Wyatt's question. Keith, you were talking earlier about fairies, and since I'm kind of new on this subject, can fairy folk appear as orbs? And is there any really resource on the net about the subject, and not some of this Disney stuff? He's kind of curious, as he had an orb sighting at his house a while back.
Well, the answer is yes, they can, and the way they appear as orbs is by generating enough bioluminescence that you can't see their body. That is one of the three types of orbs. I know of one person that actually has photos of a fairy, of multiple fairies, and I've heard of a second one that has said they do. But as far as resources that are publicly available, not that I'm aware of. But sadly, Wyatt, as I've mentioned to a number of people, and David's very well aware of this himself, my ability to find things on the net is not something to write nice things home about. So you would have to talk to somebody else about how to track it down. But I do agree, the funny thing with the Disney stuff is some of it is actually reasonably accurate, although painted in an interesting way.
All right, let's move on here. Kit Kat is asking, evening Kit Kat, good for you to join us in the chat room. When they pick people up, are the humans ever put in a lab rat maze of sorts designed to test the individual's perceptions?
Sadly, yep. The really neat trick is getting them to react so that you don't have to run through the maze. That confuses them. But yes, they do that to check cognitive and problem-solving capabilities of humans. So if you've had that unfortunate experience, you're not alone. You got to understand that most of the off-worlders, even though they've been doing this for centuries, they are still what they're doing is gauging how well mankind is evolving, if you will. Partly because of the fact they're curious, partly because of a much more important issue. They're worried about mankind's actual capabilities that mankind hasn't figured out yet. So it certainly gets complicated from that end.
All right, let's get to Elizabeth's question. At Mount Shasta, her sense was that this was a group of reptilian type that would ask nicely but was not likely to play nice once let in. Any thoughts on which group that may be?
It'd be nice if I knew exactly what they looked like, but the odds are that's Tormenon. Tormenon are an offshoot of Drakes. They originated with Drakes at about the same time that the Swazians did. But the Tormenon are strictly mercenary, and they will do whatever they have to, behave any way they need to get access to a place to do whatever they're after or whatever they've been paid for. One of the primary saving graces of the Tormenon is once they take a contract You cannot buy them. Okay, like it's been shown multiple times over the years. A human takes a contract and somebody offers them more money, and they will jump quite regularly. I've never heard of a Tormenon jumping tracks once it had accepted a contract. But those ones, the neat thing with Mount Shasta is it's a very peaceful place. But if you're let in under one premise and you break said premise to do something more complicated or just break the rules, like let's say you went in there and said, no, I'll behave and there's not going to be a problem, and then you start a fight, they won't evict you and tell you can never come back. They'll kill you. And then they don't have to worry about you coming back.
Liz states, that sounds like what I saw, that the no answer was based on knowing they would likely just do what they wanted once in.
And that would make sense with the Tormenon, because Tormenon are not good at, and this is a good thing, they really aren't good at lying. If somebody were to ask them, what is your intention in there? And they go, well, I've got to kill so-and-so. Well, they were being honest, but they will be turned away. Nothing like shooting yourself in the foot. But that would make absolute sense as to why they would be turned away.
Let's get to Joe's question. I have several photos of something in the sky that looks like a reverse Oreo cookie. Dark in the middle and silver on the top and bottom. Any idea what kind of ships those are?
Well, oddly enough, that is one of the ships I'm trying to figure out. That's a relative newcomer to the area. And I haven't quite pieced together who it belongs to. It's one of the ships that I've actually got in my sketchbook of a race that I'm trying to find out who the owners are. But those ships they've got an interesting mechanic to them, because their intake is actually through that black spot in the middle. Through that black band that you saw. They literally pull the energy in out of that or through that to run the ship itself. But specifically who it is, I'd love to tell you for certain, and it is one of those things I will piece together. Just a whole pile of things going on, which means I don't have quite as much time as I'd like.
He says it was following an airliner.
Which means it was tracking whatever the airliner was carrying. It won't have been tracking a people. So much for English. It won't have been tracking a person. It would have been tracking something they were carrying. Okay. And in all fairness, whatever that airliner is, the people on the airline may well not have known what was on it. Okay, that has unfortunately happened more often than I care to count, where a piece of equipment has been put on board for transport purposes, and an off-worlder turned around and grabbed it. And in all likelihood, the odds are it was going to be used for a weapon, which the off-worlders are not interested on the whole in turning over weaponization materials for humans. Humans are aggressive enough. They don't need help.
All right, let's go back to Elizabeth. Have you ever seen a double thimble-shaped ship? Wide open ends of a thimble in the middle, closed ends at the top and bottom.
The answer is yes. Who it belongs to, that I'm not certain of. Oddly enough, that particular ship is, well, politely put, it's a combat vessel. Okay, and if you saw it, my guess is, and it really is a guess in this case, but for it to come down where you could see it, it had to be trying to get lost in the atmosphere because of whatever was happening, topside at the time. Kind of like cutting through the bush to get a better angle. But that thing is designed for combat. So you really don't have to worry about about anybody being picked up with one of those.
I'm pretty excited. The Tim Hortons has arrived.
Priorities first here.
Well, we did make a big deal out of it. That bag there, that's my donut. This bag here is my ham and cheese sandwich. Thank you, Mrs. SOR.
You're welcome, Mr. SOR.
I'm glad I was a good boy today.
Me too.
Yes, I did all the driving today.
Yes, you did. Good boy.
Yes. All right. Follow up with Elizabeth. She is saying, do humans ever fly the combat vessels?
Yes. They actually do, just in all fairness. They don't tend to bring them into the atmosphere. Humans that are on the combat vessels or in combat positions are up there learning, for a lot of reasons, but learning how the consortium actually handles the situation. It's part of the exchange, if you will, to help bring mankind up to speed with the consortium so that mankind can be edged into a role. But they're very picky on who they let up there. They do not let people up that are trigger happy. And contrary to what a lot of companies do on Earth, they're not interested in people that, like, they won't put somebody behind the firing console that does not think on their own. If you will, a pure yes man or yes ma'am mentality will not get you on board a ship, in a combat capacity, because yes, they are absolutely, you follow protocol. But if you do not have the, if you will, backbone to make your own decisions in a combat situation, you're more dangerous to the rest of the to the rest of the battalion than you are to the enemy. But yes, humans are trained to run some of the ships, depending on on which ship. Obviously, humans are not taught to run amoebic ships. That'd just be cruel.
And what is the purpose of training humans to fly their ships?
Well, if you're going to bring people, understand the consortium is an exploration and law enforcement organization, if you will. By teaching humans how to do it, they learn how to interact with the different races. They learn how to socialize with the different races. Anybody that has been in the military would understand this, but there is a certain bond that happens when you go into a fight together or into a natural disaster. Okay. And since the consortium isn't big on the idea of going into natural disasters or creating them, and there is an ongoing, triple threat war going on, it actually does work out kind of conveniently. Now this is not to say that they recommend war, but war is a natural, it's an ongoing thing. Okay, and eventually eventually both the consortium and mankind will figure out you don't actually have to kill each other to advance your society. See, there is one race that will never get into a fight, and that's the Pleiadians. Because they're healers. They will not go they go into a combat area because they're healers, but they don't have weapons on their ships. Okay, Watchers just plain don't touch them because, well, they simply record. But the humans are taught so that they can learn how to interact. In some cases, in some of the races, knowing how to fight is the only way you're going to get their respect. I trust that makes sense.
I get that. But it still doesn't make sense to me why they would train ordinary humans that they take to fly their ships. Why wouldn't it be of, say, military standard who's trained to fly multi-million-dollar aircraft or even jetliner planes?
There's two flaws. Two flaws in that. One, they don't take the ones that they're just taking to abduct. It's not like they go, oh, let's take you up and teach you. There is a long process they usually go to ahead of time. But the other issue around just taking military, human military many times have the mentality of shoot first, ask second, or shoot because somebody said shoot. Okay, they also have developed some pretty bad or pretty limiting thought processes that hinder the training. When you take somebody that has no training and you teach them how to handle, for instance, a cargo vessel, right? It's easier if they've got no training to teach them from the ground up than it is to take somebody that has their own ideas as to how they should be flying and try and correct their methods. Because don't forget, humans work with gravity, have a backwards understanding of gravity, and therefore their flying techniques are sometimes counterproductive. Okay, especially from the off-worlder's perspective.
Question from John. Do you know much about Bill Thompson?
No.
Or Tompkins, pardon me.
Bill Tompkins? No. But I can tell you, I take it you're looking at the one, what group do I think the Nords came from?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what do you think the Nordics came from? They actually that group actually works with the Greys. The Nordics are quite well known for working with both the Greys and the Pleiadians because the Nordics look human, and that appearance does work well to help people calm down in situations of complicated interactions. Okay, that's one of the biggest reasons why the Nords are brought onto the same ships. But as far as knowing much about Bill, no, quite frankly, I know very little about him. But again, that boils down to the fact I'm one of the worst read people on the planet, I think.
Oh, you're not that bad. Your hair is too good to be that bad.
Yeah, rest assured, that didn't come from having to read.
I get that, but you still got good hair. I can vouch for it. We only got about 4 minutes before we got to go to break here. When it comes to these ships that are around and these beings who are flying them, are they hybrids that they are allowing to fly their own ships?
Oh, sometimes the answer is yes. Hybrids quite often know how because it's part of their own cultural training anyway. Hybrids are literally grown. Okay, born, grown, that jobs, call them what you will. But they're used to create a cultural interpreter. And in order to do that properly, they have to know both cultures. Okay, so teaching a hybrid to fly just makes total sense if they've got the aptitude for it. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, they certainly teach. The thing there is they don't discriminate except in mental attitude and, in all fairness, aptitude. But they don't care what race it is. They don't care what, where their background is. that's the biggest thing, that your background, like, in most countries, like in most Terran countries, what your education is or what your training is an imperative decision, deciding factor of whether or not you get hired for a job. And these guys don't care what your bookwork looks like or what your bank account looks like. They look at what your attitude, what your adaptability is, and much more importantly, what your instincts are doing. Because that's how the better pilots are created, if you will.
Well, it must be pretty easy to fly these ships then.
Well, ultimately the answer is yes. You just have to think about it in the right way. And I don't mean that it's a mental interface, but the ships are actually a whole lot easier to fly than you might think, but they don't fly the same way that mankind's do. Okay, easy, yes, but you're talking about... Think of it this way, and I think, if I remember correctly, I think you would get this one, but it's kind of like anybody can play a guitar, but it takes a real talent to be able to play it well. Okay.
I wouldn't know either, man, because I really don't. That one stings. That one stings. That one stings. Keith, I'm going to get you to hold on to that thought.
Absolutely.
Because we are about to hop out for a break here on Spaced Out Radio as our Keith Andrews, not our, well, we can call him our. How about our Keith Andrews? Shows up around here, around the first Friday of every month for a little show that we call the ET Connection. We're always on at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Load up your questions, space travelers. It's all about you in hour number 3. About your ET questions, your contact, your experiences with Keith right after this. One more hour to go, 2 hours down on the mighty SOR. It's a very fast night moving on. We'll be back right after this.
We're getting strange on Saturday nights. Hi there, this is Dave Cruz, and each Saturday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I will take you on a tour of the weird and obtuse on Spaced Out Saturdays, from aliens to Sasquatch and every tinfoil hat in between. We got you covered. Join us at spacedoutradio.com for Spaced Out Saturdays. See you there.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter, online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Dave Cruz will be back with Spaced Out Saturdays. Then on Sunday, Elizabeth Anglin on Spaced Out Sundays with Cosmic Passport. Both shows start at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. Good to have you with us as well. We are also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Quinquagesima is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets the password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with me during the show. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also join us for live chat on Facebook at the SOR Space Travelers group. We're also on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. You can listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States, TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn, download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month, rock out to some Bumblefoot, read the Encounter online, shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, and so much more. Everything at spacedoutradio.com. For the final time tonight, we introduce our R. Keith Andrews. He is our resident ET expert around these parts. He comes on the first Friday of every month. His next appearance will be on November 3rd. Keith, welcome back.
Well, thank you very much for having me there, Dave. And again,
Anytime.
Thank you to all the listeners that have both been with us right from the get-go tonight and the ones that are just dropping in. We've been getting incredible questions in here tonight. And I don't know how you keep up with it. I mean, I'm trying to watch two, only the two chat rooms. So I don't know how you manage to do it.
Oh, it's tough, man. It is very tough. But I think I have enough OCD where I'm able to get it done.
That's always handy.
Yeah. So I think it's good. Now, let's get the questions going once again. Shar was asking how you and I met. Well, that's pretty easy. We met on Facebook. And we just started chatting. Keith had told me about his ET experiences. I thought it would be a very interesting show. So we brought him in as a guest on the show. We had a lot of people who were listening at that time request that he came back. And so we did it rather frequently. And then it happened again, where when we had Keith on the show, people were asking, can you bring him on again? And I said, usually I had a turnaround between 4 and 6 months between guests, but there was so much demand for Keith and his knowledge that we ended up bringing him in once a month as one of our featured guests that we put on this show monthly. So that's how it all got started. But Keith and I didn't formally meet face-to-face until just 2 weeks ago today, when I picked him up and we drove down together for the Forest Moon Paracon. So that's over 2 years ago now.
Yeah, I'm glad you remembered how we met, because in all fairness, I was racking my brain when I was waiting for you to come down. I'm like, how the heck did we actually connect in the first place?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that's what happened. That's how Keith and I met. And it just keeps getting better. It's just like a great relationship. Anyways, let's go to Teresa's question. Keith, do you have a title or position with the Offworlders, or are you employed, so to speak? How are you involved? And are you protected or given special access in having relationships with so many different species?
Well, for lack of a better way of putting it, I'm actually a consultant. And quite like a social consultant, as in I work as a liaison between different parties to get them to see eye to eye without actually pulling guns or whatever weapon they choose to have. And am I known by pretty much all of them? The answer is yes. Simply because I'm the only one, I'm one of the few, I'm not the only person that fits that bill, but I'm one of the very few that doesn't see a difference between the different races. I don't give better treatment to, like, for instance, the commanding officer and a private. I treat them the exact same way. And that applies to whatever race. And anybody that has met me already knows, if they've ever seen me deal with people, I don't change my bearing based on what somebody's social standing is or what their, position is in life. It's just simply a case of you're an individual and, therefore am I granted any sort of special privilege or special protection? Protection sort of comes with the territory. The people that like what you're doing will step in. The people that don't will try and create a problem. Fortunately, I don't tend to make a whole lot of real annoying enemies, as it were. But does it give me access to other areas? The answer is definitively yes. The fact that I've dealt with so many of the different races does give them, if you will, cause to open doors that normally they wouldn't. Like, they've taken me, for instance, into the combat room, like into the actual firing rooms of the consortium battleships, and more importantly, and much rarer, into the Swazian battleships, like into their actual war room, to see the way they operate. Because there are certain rules that most people don't listen to. When you're told don't touch any buttons, most people, whether they want to admit it or not, will go after whatever button they're told not to touch. In my case, I have a tendency of leaving buttons alone, primarily because, well, frankly, I don't want to end up dead. I've done that before. It's not actually as fun as you might think. So, does it give me access to different things? Yes, I can walk in. Like, if I end up on deck and they've got some sort of a meeting going on between various different races, even if it's only a couple of races, and they find out I'm on deck, quite often they'll ask me to come in right then, simply because of being able to look at the situation and go, okay, this is what they're up to. Let's not make the mistake of starting a fight where there's no intention behind it. And of course, the other issue is I don't pass judgment on their methods. Because it's somebody else's culture. Their culture, depending on the race, you take a look at most of the reptilians, with humans, when you die, you end up cremating them or you end up having a ceremony and burying them. With many of the reptilians, it's more an issue of, well, he was a nice chap, but he's dead, so, pass the ham hock. Which sounds really cold, but that's the way they are.
Is there Brussels sprouts and bacon with that?
Sometimes, or at least what passes for it.
I can see that. I can totally see that. That would work for me. Totally work for me. So, in regards to Teresa's question here, how did you gain that trust with them? Like, why choose you? I realize you've been going through this a lifetime, but it still makes me wonder, why you? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand entirely what you're saying. It was something that took me the longest time, but it dates back, and you have to sort of look at a much more complicated setup. But where the turning point was frankly when the Swazians stepped in to save my life. Okay, it was that turning point, and one of these days I'll get through enough of it in my own head that talking about it clearly will actually work well. But quite frankly, people fear the aliens so much. It was humans that ended up murdering me, and it was the Srazazians that actually quite literally saved my life. And it was at that point that things started to shift. And of course, by the time I got into my teens, they realized that I was not going to react the same way that most people did. I didn't fear them because of them looking different. I didn't panic because I didn't understand what they were saying. Right. And it seems to be that aspect that enabled them to, over time, get a little closer. Let them get a little closer to me get a little closer to them, where they started actually listening to what I was talking about. And it was very much a natural progression, much like my putting my foot in my mouth when I was 10 amongst humans. And I answered a question very off the cuff, and the net result was people were looking for me for guidance as to how to run their lives, how to straighten their situations out. And that's carried on to this day. Well, essentially the same thing happened with the Offworlders. Bear in mind that before I met the Offworlders, I'd already made contact with a few of the ancient races. So when you start dealing with the interactions, well, they watch for like the Offworlders, and especially with the consortium itself, they watch for potentially beneficial anomalies. And the fact that I wasn't reacting the way many of their people did, like, for instance, when you wake up, when you've been abducted, most people when they wake up, they might strive to look around, but more often than not, they tend to go into a panic and start struggling and this sort of thing. And I remember very clearly the first time I woke up, when I wasn't actually being, damaged, I started trying to look around, and the only struggle I did was trying to strain to see who was doing what. Right. There wasn't any sort of a panic from my standpoint. It was just a question of, okay, this is a different place, and what am I looking at? So it was that sort of behavior that, from what the way I've come to understand it, is it's such a rare reaction that they started paying attention to what I was doing, why I was doing it, and they would literally listen to input, as it were. Okay, that's the long and the short of it. Now, exactly who made the call, that I don't know. Does that make sense from your end?
Absolutely it does. Let's get to Jeff's question. He is saying, Keith, are the tall whites part of the Nordics? Have you ever been in contact with them?
Well, the answer is yes and yes. Tall whites quite often are Nordic. They just are, they may not. The biggest difference is most of the Nords, quite frankly, are bearded, and many times the tall whites aren't. But aside from that, they're essentially the same people. It's kind of like it's kind of like the difference between one human and another. Make sense? I don't know how to expand on that one, in all fairness.
I didn't know that they were kind of tied together. I thought they were totally two different species. When I think of the tall whites, I'm not thinking of humans. When I think of the Nordics, I do think of humans.
Oh, wait a minute. One little odd question, because I've heard
Yes.
both descriptions, but the tall whites you're referring to, are we talking about the bald ones?
I would assume so. My idea of the tall whites is like the tall grays. Maybe I'm getting confused here.
Well, this will make a problem in trying to differentiate between them. But if we're talking about the bald ones, then no, they are not Nords by any stretch, but they are a decent people. Okay,
right.
But specifically, it's sad to say, without something solid to go with, at least a little more solid, I'm going to have a hard time on that one.
John is asking, what kind of weapons do these battleships have?
Well, for lack of a better way of putting it, there is such neat little things like molecular disassociators, which is not the same as disintegration. Disintegration, it just vanishes. Molecular disassociation, you literally see it come apart at the seams. Okay. They absolutely have concussive beams, and contrary to popular belief, you can actually build a concussion in a vacuum. Those make a mess, by the way. They also have a triphasic weapon that will cut right through a standard shield, standard force field, and, for lack of a better term, detonate inside the hull of a ship without actually penetrating the outside. Great when it comes to concussive impacts. Okay, couple of other things. Obviously, we have definitive, the photon beams and graviton beams, standard material, if you will, that they've learned how to focus. Yeah, like BTO here. BTO in Spreaker has said disintegration, reintegration, nothing to do with technology. Well, it doesn't. They use a technological focal point for it, but they don't use it for reintegration. There are ways of doing that. And the reintegration tools that they use are not actually technically a weapon, because you don't try and put a ship back together while you're flying most of the time, but that's actually a mechanical tool. Well, that's a good way to put it anyway. Make sense?
Absolutely. Let's get to another question here. Let's get to Teresa's question. Do you deal mostly in that field where other consultants would be used in other fields, like, say, medical or law, or is a consultant in any and all fields?
Quite literally, I deal with any of them. Whether it's legal, whether it's social, whether it's, whether it is exploratory, or whether it is policy binding. It depends on what the situation is they're looking for. The big issue from my end, and like I've told people, I do not have what humans call an education. I did graduate on the honor roll. I graduated, even though I'm diagnosed mentally retarded, graduated on the honor roll, but I successfully failed college. So other than that, I don't have what you would call a standard education. That's that. So you name the question. If they ask it to me, I say, for whatever reason, knowing what the answer is or knowing where to go to get it is where the key is. Okay, it's just a question from their standpoint of when to get a hold of me for it. But the biggest time is when they're dealing with humans, if you will, when they're trying to figure out what they should be doing with a given type. Oddly enough, most humans don't know how humans think.
That's the truth. Shar is asking, are there any short whites?
Absolutely. They're called kids.
Off-worlders. You weirdo. You don't make jokes. You're self-proclaimed with no sense of humor. That's not even fair.
The answer to that is, again, knowing exactly what, because there are, when you start looking at a short race that is white, there are grays, actual grays that are white. They're just another color of the grays. If they look like a gray, quite frankly, this really does fall under the category of if they look like a gray and they sound like a gray and they act like a gray, the odds are they're a gray. So if the short whites are of the appearance in basic of a gray, frankly, that's probably what they're seeing. But there are other races that are short and white. So it sort of depends on a few issues, and I'm just not entirely certain which one the individual is referring to.
All right. Elizabeth says, tall whites. I have a dual reference with tall white race from a desert planet with water. Do you know who they are?
Well, the ones from the desert planet, first of all, because it comes from water, you're likely looking at, now here's an odd question, but as far as she's aware, do they have the web? Is she referring to the ones with the webbing, or with the webbing in their fingers and probably their toes in most cases, or is she talking about there's a secondary white race that comes from the same planet, but is crustacean in nature?
She said they're tall, thin, and bald.
They would be. And that, by the feel of it, is they're related to the merfolk of Earth, but they're not from Earth. They're related in as much as they evolved along much the same pattern. But the reason that they're that thin is because of the way that the water works for them. But are they a problem child? No. If I'm getting the picture right, I suspect that they're a translucent race, and if they are the translucent one, they're frankly a water elemental.
She says, not crustacean. Planet looks like Greece on the planet.
Yeah, that would be the mares. Oh, there we are, yeah. And by the sounds of it, she's referring to, and they are they're an aquatic race. They don't live on the land, although they do periodically come up on it. Of course, they're not the only race on the planet, which might explain that in a hurry. They think music going to play. Yeah. These are, and this is why I was saying is they're actually a really nice race. But that does tell me we are talking about water elementals that have figured out how to get a rudimentary physical form. Make sense?
Absolutely, it makes sense. I'm just trying to picture it in my own head, because the hard part for me at times, and I'm not saying that I don't believe Elizabeth or believe you or whoever, but, putting my journalist hat on, which has a little taste of skepticism on there, it's hard for me to picture sometimes, even though I do believe, because I'm an experiencer myself, that there are other planets like that out there.
Understandable. And quite frankly, I'd be more concerned if you didn't have a skeptical perception. You know, that would concern me a whole lot more. You know, oddly enough, I've got a massive skeptical side to me. You know, where I take a look at everything and go, okay, what are we looking at? Because first rule of thumb is eliminate everything that is possible before taking on the aspect of it's another race. You know, just because you don't recognize something doesn't necessarily make it off-world or ancient race integral. You know, that's the thing that you have to look at. And like I said, you're being skeptical. You couldn't do your job. Your chosen this chosen line. If you weren't skeptical, you couldn't do it. In case you hadn't noticed.
I like to throw in a little bit of humor here every now and again, and this one comes from Bob Davis. He says, I want to know, where are the bathrooms on these ships, and are they equipped to handle multiple species?
Well, the bathrooms are wherever they get built. Let's face it, they're certainly not on the flight deck. You know,
there is no poop deck on these. Is that what you're saying?
Well, there is, but that's what they call the lavatory. You know, the poop deck is not a literal place to go poop. But are they equipped to handle multiple different species? The answer is yes. Fortunately, most bipedals have a very similar configuration. Well, in all fairness, most corporeals do. Many of the non-corporeals have a different way, if you will, of disposing of waste product, making a bathroom useless. You know, but, you know, rest assured that side of it is taken into consideration, if you will. Don't know if that makes him feel any better, but no, you don't have, you know, they do have, oddly enough, they've got various different, you know, the various different sizes. They don't have males and females. You know, like as far as like humans have, this is a male's washroom and that's a female's. You don't have that on these races. That's a washroom. Some have, if you will, stalls where it's private, so you don't have to be, you know, so it's not just a public washroom, as it were. Right? But everybody goes into the same room, or into one of multiple of the same room.
Do they have the 3 seashells, or do they have toilet paper? This is stuff that I need to know now.
And again, that depends on which ship you're on. Fortunately, when they take humans on as actual passengers or as actual, shall we say, travelers, they make sure that the facilities can accommodate. Okay. But let's face it, if they're not planning on humans, they don't, generally speaking, have the ship geared for it. Like, on a amoebic ship that is not designed to carry humans, they don't have facilities available for humans. But then again, with a truly amoebic ship that is not designed for them, you can't get into it as a human. You're just not going to fit.
What about bidets? Are there bidets up there? I still don't even know how to use one on this planet, let alone, use one up there.
Well, that's just it. Some of the things that humans have built, the off-worlders look at it and go, why?
Oh, come on. You're not a bidet guy?
I have enough trouble with the good day guy.
Leave the Australians out of this.
But they're nice people.
I know, I get it. Gee whiz. All right. Shar, I'm not going to mention your comment. That's taken us down a huge, huge way that we don't want to go. Preacher is asking, do they recycle the waste in the ships for energy or supplies?
Well, ultimately the answer would be yes. Okay. The reason being, quite frankly, all matter is usable. In the simplest and most inefficient method that is out there that I'm aware of. Well, no, it's not the most inefficient, but a proper fusion reactor will take waste material and turn it into energy without any effort at all. But there are other methods that are far more efficient. And yes, they use it for what science fiction in today's world has called replicators. Right. They actually work. Very much like the 3D printers that are out now. You can do exactly the same thing with food. At least they can. Mankind, not so much yet. Usually what they turn out tastes like pressed cardboard. Or is that just normal food?
I have no idea. Sounds like Mrs. SOR's cooking, to be honest, but that's okay.
You could get hurt for that.
That's why I say it when she's upstairs. Sleeping. Shar is asking, Keith, am I more likely to see things because I listen to shows like this?
No. You're just more likely, in all fairness, Shar, you're not more likely to see them. You're just simply more likely to recognize them. And there is a very distinct difference there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The thing is, by listening to shows like this one, what ends up happening is you become more aware of the possibilities of where to look or what might be something you've been watching. Whereas somebody that hasn't been listening will just chalk it up to something weird that they can't put their finger on.
It does open you up, though. I would say. And I'm not saying in a spiritual way, but could it not be, as you say, you recognize things a little bit more often, you see things a little bit more out of the corner of your eye? Wouldn't it, and I'm not just saying it's this show, or you, or me, but if you were in this field, and the more you listen to it, and the more you listen for the signs, would it not make you more aware?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it basically falls under the same category of when you buy a vehicle, all of a sudden you see more of that vehicle around you. It doesn't mean there are more. It just means you're more aware of them. That's where the difference is. So, it doesn't make it more likely, but it does mean you'll recognize the situation more often. I think that's the best way to look at it from that standpoint.
And that makes sense. Let's get to Daryl's question. She is asking, Keith, are all the crafts climatized and equalized?
Well, all of them? Absolutely not. But with the ships that are not, that aren't balanced out in that fashion, they do have a tendency, if they're intending on people being on them, they have a tendency of having, having outfits or having protective gear that enable the individual to function. Like, for instance, if you want a Pleiadian to come into a human atmosphere, you best have an atmospheric suit for them, because they will die on Earth. It's just that simple. Same as if you want to take a human and put them in a high chlorine atmosphere, you best be giving them an atmosphere suit if you want them to live. Right. But all ships are by no means equalized. Some of them are because the race just flat out refuses. It's our ship. You want to come on here, that's fine. But we're not making special arrangements for you. And yes, there are some pretty grumpy aliens.
Are they climatized to whom is on the ship? So, for instance, if they have, say, somebody from Venus, is it going to be different or kept in, is that person or alien going to be kept in a different room than, say, someone from Earth?
Quite frankly, more often than not, the answer is yes. And the reason for that is because they can adjust individual rooms. When you take the consortium ships, they are strictly climatized all the way across. Okay, as best they can. Now, obviously, there are breathing problems that they have where they simply supply the different breathing apparatus so that the different races can actually function. But they don't separate them at all. In most other cases, they will separate them, if it's because they're not designed to handle multiple races at the same time. So much as they've got rooms that can be isolated and acclimatized. Like, for instance, with the ferry folk, with the sea ferries, they have rooms where they will pump all the water out of it so that humans can breathe. Okay, but they won't pump water out of the entire city so a human can move around comfortably.
All right, let's get to Robert White's question. Aussie Rob, how's tomorrow looking? You still haven't answered that. Have any races thought of using teleportation technology to remove the waste that is being talked about from the living entities?
Absolutely. But the problem with it, like, how do I put this? There is some technology out there where when they transport somebody, because of the way that their technology works, it takes all the stuff they need with them, but when it reconstitutes the body, it doesn't bring the wasted material. Kind of like eliminating the need for the washroom on a flight. By the time you get where you're going, you no longer have to go. But as far as using teleportation technology to specifically, for instance, target the bowels, I'm sure it can be done. I just don't, from what I understand, nobody bothers. There's all sorts of more natural ways of dealing with things.
All right. Next question. This one comes from Joe Monk. Do the aliens ever worry about getting or passing on diseases like the Europeans bringing a smallpox to the New World?
Worry about? I suspect in the beginning they probably did. Well, I know in the beginning they did. At this point, it is second nature to them. So do they worry about it? The answer is no. Okay, they take natural precautions, but there's no concern to it. It's just protocol. Okay, it's kind of like when humans operate, in a human hospital, they've got certain procedures that are just standard. You just do them. There's no thought and there's no concern as to why you're doing them. The why is because that's what protocol says, and therefore you do it. But they certainly don't tend to worry about whether or not there's a disease passed on. With many of the reptilian races, the reason for that is if your body is not strong enough to maintain itself against the weakness, against the illness, they're going to kill you anyway. Okay, so, this is one of the biggest issues. And, of course, with the length of time they've been here, when you're talking about different races, you got to remember, most races that humans get are not transferable to cats and dogs, and vice versa. Well, it's the same issue. Greys don't have the same physiology as humans do. Therefore, they don't tend to pick up the same illnesses. If that makes any sense to people.
All right, let's go to Eric Markham's question. Is there a limit to how many times waste can be recycled? Does the water start looking like really... Oh, God, this is going to all hell in a handbasket here. No more crap questions, guys. All right? No more crap questions. But I'll let this one go because the preacher is a scientist. Is there a limit to how many times waste can be recycled?
Absolutely. It can only be recycled once. Because after it's been recycled, it's no longer the waste it was, and when it comes back around, it's still going through for the first time. How's that for simple?
That's simple. If you have any more questions about poo, I am going to omit them. No more poo, please. I would appreciate that. Let's get to Kelly's question. Are some of the craft perhaps alive, like partially organic, where maybe whoever was piloting one or manning weapons would symbiotically interface with said craft?
Absolutely. There is absolutely no question. Some of the ships out there, especially when you're dealing with the amoebics, their ships are very much partially alive. So are the ascetics. The ascetic ships literally think. It's just a question of, if you will, a cooperative effort. The last thing you want to be is on a ship that doesn't like you. That's not going to go well for you. Because a ship that doesn't like you will open the airlocks. Which you can see where that's going to go south in a hurry.
For sure. I never thought of the ships being organic. But it does make sense. We've also seen that in Hollywood movies, too.
Absolutely. And yes, there is such a thing as slave ships, as in organic ships that are controlled, as compared to symbiotic ones where it's organic ships working with people. And I'll use the term people a little loosely.
Let's move on here. Alan's question. Who of the extraterrestrials is responsible for the law of one? Ra.
Well... Oddly enough, it wasn't Ra. He wasn't the one that came up with it. And it really wasn't so much as a specific as an understanding. What it boils down to is whoever built whichever planet, they were the one that basically had the say as to how the planet was being built and what the baseline operating rules were. Okay, each planet, like we've touched on the issue of different belief structures, who God is, do they have their own gods, this sort of thing. And it really does boil down to if you build a planet according to spiritual society, that's the best word I can use for it. If you build a planet, you're the one that lays down the baseline law for that planet. Following societal law, which boils down to you have to obey the laws of the land in which you are. Even when you're looking at planetary building, you look at the laws of the solar system that were laid out. If you're building a planet inside that solar system, whoever built the solar system built a baseline set of laws first. You have to work within those laws while you're building the planet. So when I talk about this societal law thing, it's not just for humans. It goes all the way up into planetary and galactic configurations. And people have a lot of trouble going, well, how can somebody build a planet? Well, try and explain how you build a house to an ant. It boils down to the same issue. The lack of explanation, I mean.
I got a couple of questions coming in from Revolution Radio.
Sure, fire away.
This one comes from Buddha. You had to start it, didn't you? You had to start it. Are gnomes aliens? And have the gnomes abducted Dave? Really?
Oh, Jesus.
Do you
This is
realize?
not my fault.
Do you really realize, Buddha, the hell you just caused me? Because now everybody is going to get on the gnome bandwagon. Going to see pictures all over my Twitter feed, Facebook. My goodness, man. Come on. Come on. Anyways, to his question, are gnomes aliens?
No. They grew up here. They literally evolved here. So, no, they didn't come and fly up on a ship and take Dave away. And they haven't tried kidnapping Dave and dragging him down into a hole underneath a tree. But they are Terran. Fascinating people. Funny as heck when you actually get to know them. But most people consider them only slightly less grumpy than dwarves.
No, not a problem. I'm so far liking this. I'm so far liking this. Yeah, perfect. Not a single gnome picture. We got out. We got out of there pretty. We got out of there pretty. Oh, there it is. Damn it, here they come. There they come. Shame on you, people. Shame on you. Buddha, if you saw me right now, I'm shaking my finger right at my screen where it says your name right now. Because I'm getting hammered now with gnome pictures. All right, moving on. KC in the Revolution Radio chat room wants to know, do ETs monitor data and communication centers more than other places on the planet? That's a great question, by the way.
That really is. But the answer is no. They certainly monitor the data. And, I mean, you and I were talking about this, actually one of our first conversations, I think, where I asked you point blank if you thought humans were the only ones actually listening. But no, they do watch the data, absolutely. But it's not the only place they watch. Because from their standpoint, depending on the race that we're talking about, they look at verbal communication, they look at mental communication, pheromonal, you name it, they're scanning for it. And of course, not every race is scanning for all of the above.
All right, let's move on here. Let's get to Adam's question. Adam is a brand new listener in the chat room tonight on Spreaker. Adam, thank you so much for finding Spaced Out Radio. He works nights and he allows us into his work so that way we can, properly invade his workspace. So thank you so much. Adam's question is, what's the difference between white and gray as in alien species other than color?
Well, it depends. Okay. And the reason I put it that way is because there are a few races that are just simply they look like humans and they're white. The difference, if they look like gray and they're white, they are literally a different color gray. They still operate the same way. And you'll find that and grays, just for those that aren't entirely aware, usually are somewhere between 3.5 and 4.5 feet tall. Now, there are some races that are around the same size but look different. Okay. Some of your fairies are shorter and they're white. Okay. Certainly if we, when you take a look at gnomes aren't Caucasian, they are tanning color. But from the sound of what people seem to be talking about, the big difference would be the fact that the grays themselves are pure scientists, and the whites have a multitude. The small whites have a multitude of different aspects as to why they do things. Okay, but I'm still, quite frankly, I'm going to have to look into figuring out exactly which white race seems to be the one that everybody's running across. Yeah, that's where my biggest where the biggest complication is on that line of questioning. Not trying to be evasive, just honest.
Let's get to, as time winds down here, another question. Elizabeth is asking, do you know if some ships have a bacteriological safety system that will kill anyone who tries to break in or steal a ship?
Absolutely. Usually those are on the living ships. Many people call those digestive juices. But there are others that they literally will fly if they know what's coming on board. They can modify the filtration system to amplify a toxic element to whatever's coming on board without damaging the resident race. Needless to say, it's not always a fail-safe, but there are ways of solving the problem. It just depends. I mean, the variety of security systems are, to say the least, extreme.
Wow, this has been a fast couple of hours, my friend.
Yeah, you noticed that too. I
Yes.
just looked at it, it's like, holy mackerel.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Liz's next question just got banned. Daryl is asking, how do the organic ships and ETs reproduce? Are they self-replicators?
Well, they certainly don't join together from that standpoint. That'd just be a little twisted. But they have, in all fairness, the ships that I know of are not self-replicating, but politely put, they need downtime where they can go off and do their thing as well.
We're going to rush through the other questions here because we are down to about 90 seconds here. Preacher is asking, can a ship run out of the material they use for propulsion? If they run out on Earth, do we have the element they need to refuel?
That depends on the race. In most cases, the answer is they don't run out of fuel enough to worry about. Technically, it's possible, but I can't give you a specific on the whole because the majority of them don't have that problem.
Well, that was a quick answer. I was expecting at least 18 more seconds out of that. 18 more seconds. That's what I would have needed. Either way.
Oh, there you go.
Either way, my friend. You know what? It's always so much fun when we have you on Spaced Out Radio. I hope you still enjoy it.
Well, simply put, if I didn't enjoy it, in all fairness, I wouldn't be here. That said, yes, it is. I always find it goes way too fast, though. I think this is why I ended up going to a 4-hour program for a while there with another station. And we have done that periodically here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm tired. It's been a long
No
week.
doubt.
Been a long week. All right, my friend, you hold on. I'm going to wrap this thing up. R. Keith Andrews comes on Spaced Out Radio the final Friday of every month. His next appearance, make that the first Friday of every month. His next appearance will be Friday, November 3rd, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. If you're listening in the background, you hear Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Bumblefoot rocks us in and takes us home every single night on this show. Get your horns up for Mr. B, one of the best guitar players in the world, right there. Tomorrow night and Sunday, we have Spaced Out Saturdays with Dave Cruz tomorrow night. And then on Sunday, the beautiful and eloquent Elizabeth Anglin with Spaced Out Sundays Cosmic Passport. All get going at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com. I want to thank our team, Everett Thiemer from The Encounter Online, Amy Martin, Syndicate Associate, Michael W. Hall, our new team lawyer, Olaf Phillips, myself, Catherine James on social media, same as Tim Doyle, Jolene Lammers on the web, and the dulcet tones of the bearded wonder, Bob Davis, who introduces us on every show. But most importantly, my friends, I thank all of you in the chat rooms, on Twitter, for sharing our show, talking to people about it on a daily basis, a weekly basis, trying to attract more friends into our crowd. I love it. Thank you so much. I'm going to talk to you on Monday night, because together, my friends, we own the night. Talk to you Monday. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. Take us out of here for the weekend. Take us home. Good night.